our good friend John Terret, who is with us, says, look, this is the biggest political story of our careers, and it benefits Trump massively. And he's with us right now, John Terret, live in New York. John, good to have you with us, man. It's been way too long.
Good morning, John. It's great to be back on the program. I've got my big boy pants on, and you can ask me anything you like about this, but let me just set out the store for you.
Go ahead.
I mean, if you thought that Watergate in 1974 was big, or you thought the election debacle surrounding Bush and Gore in 2000 was big, then you ain't seen nothing yet, because what we now have is the British people voting to end this huge European Union experiment, which has been going on since the 1950s, and they've basically turned around by a majority of 52% to 48% and said we've had enough of being ruled by faceless diplomats in Europe. We want out. It is a huge, huge kick in the teeth for the British political establishment and the European political establishment. And the Prime Minister, David Cameron, who's actually been, I think most people would agree, a pretty good Prime Minister, has done some good work and is widely liked in the UK, actually, has resigned because he nailed his colours firmly to the Remain camp, and they lost big time yesterday. This is a very, very big deal, and everything on the world stage now is up in the air. We are in uncharted territory, and the Dow Jones has just opened. It immediately plunged by 507 points, an indication of what we just don't know about the future.
And the head of the UKIP party, Nigel Farage, saying that June 23rd is the new Independence Day for Britain. Yeah. Look, you're going to get a new prime minister. We had Mark Burkholder on. He's an international businessman, former Speaker of the House in Georgia, live in London. He said that most likely the former mayor of London, Boris Johnson, would emerge as the new prime minister. Is that accurate?
I think it is. And I was just listening to your program just now, and you played a long excerpt from Boris Johnson just before you came back on the air. That is Boris Johnson. He's a Conservative Member of Parliament, and he is the main face of the Leave campaign. And I honestly can't think who else is going to take over from Prime Minister David Cameron. He has said that he will stand down by October, by the time the Conservative Party, the ruling Conservative Party, has its annual political conference. He wants a new prime minister in place, and I honestly can't think, now that this has happened, who will take over from him other than Boris Johnson, who is also, as you correctly identify, the former mayor of London. He was the second mayor of London under the new system that they instigated kind of 15 or whatever it is years ago. But Boris Johnson is going to have a very difficult job, John, very difficult indeed, because there are Conservative members of Parliament who absolutely loathe him and really, really despise him for what he has done. He has thrown the British political establishment into absolute turmoil. I mean, you should understand one thing. The Remain camp got the vast majority of its votes in London, where the political elite live. Also in Scotland, which didn't want to leave the European Union, but almost the entire rest of the country, the heartlands, voted in favour of leaving, giving this 4% division between the Leave and the Remain camp, with the Leave winning. And this is a very good day for Donald Trump. I was watching CNN last night. They were having a lengthy debate about why he had abandoned the White House trail here and gone to Turnberry in Scotland. Well, officially he went there because his children are in the process today of opening his new golf course in Turnberry. But I was screaming at the television thinking, you idiots, the reason he's gone is because he's read the runes and he wants to be in this country when this decision comes out, because the campaign that they've run over there in order to leave the European Union is very, very, very strikingly similar to the campaign that he's running here.
No question about it. And look, he went there, he said, to play golf, which he deserves a few days off. But the timing was such. Look, these guys are smart. I've been, as you know, for Trump from day one, and they tend to figure things out. But look, I want to ask you a question. And by the way, we're with John Terret, international correspondent in New York, covers the United Kingdom in depth. John, I want to get your take on this. I get why London went so big for Remain. Obviously, that's where the political elite is. That's where the bankers are. I mean, that's where the financial center is. That makes sense to people. And certainly the heartland, as you mentioned, having enough with the whole thing. They want to get their country back, their sovereignty back. They got migrants coming in. They're on welfare. They don't work. They're paying for them. It's a mess. Why Scotland? Somebody just told me 62-38 Remain, which was counter English trend outside of London. What was driving the Scottish vote?
Well, I think it's that the Scots don't want to leave the European Union. And now what has happened as a result of this is that the leader of the Scottish National Party has already put into motion, she's the Prime Minister of Scotland, she's already put into motion the paperwork to bring about a second referendum for Scotland, leaving the United Kingdom. So we now face the situation where the Scots are going to have a second vote they had their last one last year or the year before, they're going to have another one now about whether they should stay as part of the United Kingdom. So now the UK is out of the EU and Scotland is threatening to break away and be independent and go back into the European Union. So it's an extraordinary situation. I think it was mainly driven by the fact that they don't want to leave the European Union. There's also very strong criticism of the British Socialist Party, the Labour Party there. I think the feeling was that they probably could have done more to campaign more strongly across the country in favour of staying in the United Kingdom, and I think that they did do as much as they could have done in Scotland as well, although Scotland, as you know, pretty much voted in favour of staying.
The Remain coalition, the geography was London, Scotland. So we're still trying to figure out, we understand obviously Scotland voted in favor of remaining 62-38. It was a big, it was an over 20-watt 4-point win. So what was driving Scotland's desire to stay into the European Union while the rest of England, absent London, was voting to get out? Also, the Irish voted to get out. So
I know a lot of working class areas, a lot of places where industry has been decimated over the last 40 years while we've been part of the European Union, voted in favor of exiting the European Union. And we watched it last night in the northeast, in Newcastle and Sunderland. What happened was there, people either voted massively, overwhelmingly to leave the European Union, or in cities where the vote was to stay, the margin in favor of staying was considerably less than we had anticipated it would be. So we knew that something was going on almost the first moment that the votes in the northeast started to come in. And I think I can sum it up pretty simply for you. I mean, the British people, they love going to Europe on holiday. They love the idea of trading with those European countries, all of which are now in this one 28-member bloc called the EU, now 27 members, but they don't want to be ruled by these faceless, grey people who are appointed by member governments. You see, the laws that are made in Europe are put together by the European Commission, and the Commission are political appointees appointed by prime ministers all over the 28-member bloc. And then, although there are members of Parliament, members of the European Parliament who are elected in each of these countries, they're only part of a reproving chamber, so they can only modify the laws that are put together by these faceless bureaucrats. And I think that basically what happened is the ordinary working man and woman in Britain voted to end that because they're fed up with the incredible expense that it cost Britain to be in the European Union, and they just basically, as Donald Trump says, they took their country back.
No question about it. We're with John Terret, international.
But John,
yes.
I should say the country is deeply split on this now. That's one of the things. I mean, it's 48-52. It means that half the country think we should have stayed, the other half think we should be going, which indeed it is now, and it's looking as if elderly people or older people may have tipped the balance. So there's a lot of anger among young people who generally didn't want to leave the Union against older people who we think probably did tip the balance in favor of exit. And, of course, many of those people have said openly and in public, well, what do we fight the war for? That's the line they take. What do we fight the Second World War for? Only to be ruled by faceless European diplomats.
Look, it makes a lot of sense. To what extent did the flow of migrants and immigrants coming into the United Kingdom, dictated by the European Union, basically you lost control of your borders per se because you had a number that they stamped and those people came in. What degree did that play into the victory to secede? Well,
that issue of the European Union issuing diktats, which the British government had no choice but to follow, goes all the way down through British society, through taxation, through business and commerce and immigration and healthcare and all sorts of issues. And that's one of the reasons why I think people have rebelled. Now, it's very important for your listeners to understand. When the whole debate really centered around immigration. That was really the main driving force. And at times it got very, very nasty, just like this race for the White House here has at times got very, very nasty over the same issue. But you have to remember that Britain is an island. And so the immigration that the British people are talking about is not the Syrians and the Iraqis and the Afghanis who are fleeing up through Turkey and on into Germany in particular and on into other northern European countries. What they were talking about was member countries, people who, particularly in the former Eastern Bloc of the former Soviet Union, places like the Czech Republic and Poland in particular, and Hungary and Bulgaria, because those countries are now members of this massively expanded European Union that began with just a handful of members who produced coal, turned into the EEC, the European Economic Community, and has developed into the EU, this massive behemoth with 28 countries. Those people are quite eligible to leave those very, very poor countries in the former Soviet bloc and just move to the United Kingdom if they wish to. Can't stop them. It's all part of the rules, in the same way that British people could go and live in Hungary or Romania if they wish to, but of course they don't wish to.
Right.
So what happened is 3 million people have come over from those Eastern Bloc countries and elsewhere in the EU to live in the United Kingdom. But at the same time, Britain hasn't got any more schools or any more doctors or any more roads or any more housing.
Or jobs.
And that's the issue that was at hand.
So you get this mass migration of millions of people coming in, and you don't have the infrastructure to back it. They're not paying taxes, so it's not like they're contributing to the infrastructure, and there's no jobs there. So they just come, they get on welfare, and so the system becomes additionally taxed and stressed out, and people are looking at money flying out of their paycheck and saying to themselves, what the hell's going on, right? I mean, is that basically what happened?
That is essentially what has happened. This is the way the argument has gone back and forth in the last year since the referendum was announced. And, of course, the political elite have been absolutely whooped by the British public here because the British elite did not want to leave the Union and are very happy to have lots of immigration into the country, saying that it benefits the country, it helps the economy and all of that kind of stuff. But the ordinary working man on the street appears to have taken the other view, that they come here, they take places in schools, they take up. Of course, healthcare is completely free in the UK. That's why everybody wants to get to the UK, because once you land in the UK, you get treated by a doctor just like anyone else, completely free. And people in Britain, I think, a sufficient number of them have realized this and voted against it. They want to take back. They're not anti-immigration. They want to help. They want to be kind. But Britain is a very, very small place. I mean, if you ever come to New Jersey or you go to the northern part of Virginia, up near Washington, D.C., where it's very, very busy, that's what Britain is like all over. And there are 60 million people there on that tiny island. And I think, sufficient numbers of people have said enough is enough. We must take back our country. We must be welcoming and kind to refugees who genuinely need it, but we can't be swamped with people who want to come here just because they like the society better.
Well, you know what, John? I think you nailed it, John. Terret, the same thing is going to happen in November. You're going to have our own Brexit vote, self-styled, if you will, in November. I think this portends very well for Trump. The other thing is, we were talking about this earlier with a couple people, is the public surveys were so wrong. And this is the second time now this has happened in the United Kingdom. It happened in your most recent parliamentary elections.
Absolutely.
Where they're just not even close.
The pollsters are discredited. Even here in the United States, the pollsters are absolutely discredited. They get it wrong time and time again.
Unbelievable. We're out of time. I want to thank John Terret for being with us. We're going to have him back. He's an international correspondent. Right now he's in New York City, and he covers the United Kingdom like a glove. Thanks for being with us, John. Thanks for that update.
Thank you, John. Have a great weekend. See you soon.